Blood streamed down my nose. My pristine white shirt was covered in dust and mud. My buttons were ripped apart, my pocket torn. Tears were streaming down my eyes. I just had a run-in with a school bully. My grandmother saw me, reached down, picked me up to comfort me. And then she put me down and rushed off to the kitchen. She said, "Don't worry, I'm making your favorite bread pudding." And that's how we solved everything in our family. If we were upset, bread pudding. If we were happy, then we celebrate with cake and ice cream. Sugar was a very important part of our life. If Ashdin didn't want his yogurt, put a spoonful of sugar inside. My mother, while growing up, legit had a dish called rice with sugar. So apparently it had all the macros and micros needed for a good child to develop. But that was her dish. Sugar was very important. Later on, when we used to go for buffet dinners, we used to immediately attack the dessert counter. It was almost as if, the soups and the salads and the main course were just like a distraction that someone had placed there. We had to go for the dessert because that's where the real stuff was. And when my friends saw me eating like this, they looked at me and said, "Ashdin, are you mad? There is no way you can eat that much sugar. It's not good for you. You're going to die. What's wrong with you?" And I would laugh at them and say, "Guys, you don't understand. My mom eats like this. My grandmother eats like this. It's basically in my genes. And this is why we are so strong. We can have as much sugar as we want." My mother had a better excuse. She said that she had low blood sugar, and hence she needed to keep eating all these sweet sugary things in order to maintain it. Because after all, that's what the DNA was. That's what the deal life had given her. And that is how we approach our genes. Our genes are an amazing thing. They have this crazy ability to take the blame for everything. Everything that we don't want to do or change, we just blame it on our genes. And our DNA is the ultimate scapegoat. Now, the truth is that there are some things that we cannot change. For example, the color of our eyes, the color of our skin, my big nose. Those are all part of our DNA and genes. We can't change those. But there are certain genes that we can change. We can actually turn these genes on and turn these genes off. And what does this mean? This means that you have the ability to change what is being passed down to you. If diabetes is something that everybody in your family has had, chances are you can turn that off and not have diabetes. Just because your parents were obese doesn't mean that you need to be obese. Just because someone was depressed in your family doesn't mean that depression runs to you. And there's this entire field called epigenetics that talks about this. And there are 3 factors that can change this gene expression. The first is the environment around us. So what is the quality of the air, the pollution, the quality of our water, the sunlight that we're getting? The second are the actions that we make, the amount of exercise that we do, the kind of food that we eat, the amount of sleep that we get. The actions can change our gene expression. And our final one is the environment in our minds. So are you stressed? Are you happy? Are you joyous? Are you grateful? Are you sad? Are you angry? All these can change your gene expression. And that's amazing because now you can control these things. As much as I would like to geek out with you on this, I can't, because the doctor in my name is part of my surname. So I cannot geek out on the medical stuff with you. But I am a habit coach. And what I can talk about are habits. So let's understand habits and how they interact with gene expression. So what are habits? Our habits are basically actions or thoughts that are conscious or subconscious that repeat at a set frequency. Let me decode this for you. So normally we think of habits as actions, right? Tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth are all actions. But our thoughts are also habits. If you wake up every morning and say, "Oh my God, life sucks. One more day," that's what your day is going to be like. That is a habit. And habits are not just subconscious, because that's what people normally think. Can you imagine subconsciously going to the gym and working out? Subconsciously? That means that all of us could technically have 6 packs without knowing it. I wish that was true, but unfortunately, that's not how it is. And finally, a set frequency. What does set frequency mean? That means that it repeats itself at a certain point of time. And this is where consistency in a habit comes in. So that salad that you had 4 weeks ago, that is not considered a habit. That happened once. You have to repeat it in order to make it a habit. Now, just like our DNA, our habits can also be inherited. Our grandparents give our parents certain habits, and our parents give us certain habits. And this inheritance of habits is taking place at a very subconscious level all the time. And these are what I call familial habits. Familial habits. Now, what is interesting about these familial habits is that they're not taught to us. So, you know how we are taught how to eat with a fork and spoon, how to tie our shoelaces. Those are things that are physically taught to us. Familial habits are learned through observing our parents' body language, through observing our parents' behavior, how they react to certain situations. We observe this, we pick it up, and then we start forming habits around these. And this is how habits form, these familial habits. Now, very interestingly, and I know that you know this, our parents tell us one thing and do something completely different, right? It is this stuff that they do that we pick up, that stays in our mind, not what has been told to us. Hence, familial habits come not from instruction, but from observation. Let me give you an example. So a client of mine came to me and said, Ashdin, I have to give up smoking, man. This is too much. You know, smoking runs in my blood. My entire family smokes, and I want to get rid of this filthy habit, but I don't know how to. And when I was a kid growing up, my parents told me, don't you dare smoke. If you smoke, we will disown you. But still, I started smoking. The reason being, you observe the behavior and you started. It's not that it's in your blood. It's not that it's in your genes. You observe the behavior and you started. And that plays for a bigger role than anything else. Interestingly, when we have these kind of familiar habits, we don't realize that there is another way of being apart from the way that we've been living all this while. So a podcast listener once wrote into me saying that I have tremendous back pain, tremendous knee pain. I spend my entire life sedentary. So that means I'm watching TV on the sofa, or when I'm working, it's again sitting down. So I said, okay, why don't you exercise? Why don't you use a standing desk? And he didn't understand what I was saying. He was like, what do you mean by exercise? Nobody in his family exercised. Nobody in his family's parents had never gone for a walk. In their minds, they believed that exercise was only for those bodybuilders, for those athletes. As a result, his familial habit of being sedentary was what occupied his mind. He'd never seen that there was another way of living altogether. Isn't that amazing? Our financial habits and our financial health are also closely linked to these familial habits. So I work with an NGO that helps move underprivileged children out of this poverty cycle. And while working with them, I observed something very interesting, that it was their familial habits that were keeping them grounded in poverty. Let me give you an example. As soon as money came in, they would spend it. They would buy luxuries. They would spend it on impressing others, showing off. And as a result, they never had savings. They never had any investments. So how could they get out of this cycle? Now, these are intelligent kids. And as soon as we explained to them that this is what was happening, and this is the way that you can get out of it, guess what started happening? They started saving money. They started investing it and actually getting out of this cycle of poverty. Now, listening to this, you must be wondering, oh my God, what are the familial habits that I have that I need to start dealing with? So let's break it down step by step by step. So there are 3 steps and stages that you can follow right now to start understanding and getting rid of these familial habits. The first stage is identification. If you don't know it's a habit, if you don't know it's a familial habit, there's no way that you can change it. So identification is key. How do you identify? Is the habit that you have that is not working for you the same as a habit that your parent has? or the same that your habit that your grandparent has. If you can see that direct link, it's a familial habit. And you will immediately want to go to your parents, rush to them and say, this is a familial habit. You're ruining my life by this habit. You have to change. Do not do that, because your parents are not going to change. They've been doing this habit for longer than you've been born. How can they change? And in fact, that is going to lead you to frustration. So instead, you have to work on yourself. And the same way that you learned this habit, through observation, they are going to learn this as well and start making a change in their life. So don't force it upon themselves. You act and they will follow. So the first is identification. The second stage is intention. Why do you want to change this? Is it not serving you? If a habit is serving you, please stick to it. It's a good habit. But if it is not serving you, how can you change it? And why do you want to change it? This intention is very important and very personal to you. It has to be a deep intention that you feel. Because there will be times when your family will make fun of you for wanting to change this habit, as my family did as well when I would order a salad instead of a cheesecake, right? So they're going to make fun of you. Your intention has to be strong enough to be rigid and say, no, I want to do this. I want to make this change. So intention setting is the second stage and very important. This third stage is to replace. Very often what we try doing is we remove a habit. We say that this is not working for me, yank it out. And then when we yank it out, we leave a little void there. And it is this void that prevents us from growing, because we want to fill that void with something. And very soon we fill it back with that same habit, which is why we fail so often at making the changes that we want in our life. Instead, you pull it out and replace it with a new habit. So for example, in our family, our the dinner dessert changed from a chocolate cake to 2 dates. And then after a while, once you were comfortable with those 2 dates, we changed it and replaced it again with a herbal tea. And that was the journey from chocolate cake to herbal teas. Was it difficult? Maybe slightly. But overall, it completely changed the way that our health was. Now, after listening to this, I want you to make me a promise. As your habit coach, make me a promise that you will never, ever, ever blame your genes again. You will never feel that this is the hand that you were dealt and this is the hand that you have to play. You have the ability to change it. And you can change it by understanding these familial habits. These habits that are there throughout your life. Replace them and choose the habits that are going to give you that awesome life. Keep evolving, keep changing to that amazing life of yours.